First of all, I need to say I'm kind of an interloper because I'm from the world of universities. But I've been working for some time now with the Georgian National Museum on this. So we began in, I can press the button, in 2017. I was here working on a European research grant with my husband, who's the person leaping in the air there. And whilst I was working, he was volunteering at the Georgian National Museum, and he's a prehistoric archaeologist. And we were told that there were a few problems when it came to outreach. Darejan is head of the wonderful educational department, but we had observed, well, there's no better way to put this really, Soviet practices of mainly older ladies walking around very sternly, going through every single artifact, and very bored school kids, from very young ones to teenagers on phones, disengaging. And so we had a chat with Darejan and with Misha and David. Misha at this point was David's assistant as the deputy. And we established that the curatorial staff who had the academic expertise weren't really good or really, in some cases, willing to engage with the fact that they needed to talk to the people who had the experience in pedagogy, meaning Darejan and her team. So we started by discussing with Darejan a way we could either give school teachers the skills they needed to take children round, or we could engage with curatorial staff. And speaking to our friends amongst the curators, we found a lot of the older people perhaps didn't feel confident in dealing with children and young people, but younger curatorial staff, particularly, there's a really dynamic group of women in their sort of early 30s in the Georgian National Museum. They really wanted to, but they hadn't really been put in touch with those who dealt with children and teaching before. So with seed funding from the University of Exeter, we set up a series of workshops for school teachers and curatorial staff side by side. And we started writing workbooks, basically just suggestions for school teachers and curators, how you introduce children to museums and heritage sites. For a start, don't try and tell them about every single object in every single cabinet. Choose 5 or 6 things that will capture their imagination, tell them the stories of those objects, get them out the door wanting to come back, wanting more. And then we kind of identified, that was the first part. Then we identified a problem that is really part of the wider problem we're experiencing in Tbilisi right now. And in this, I'm going to distance my Georgian colleagues from this entirely because I know it could cause them problems. I come from a background of working with religious minorities, specifically Christians in the Middle East. And I'm used to having to negotiate church politics and things. What I found here was problematic was, referring to Maria's paper this morning, there is a lot of myth-making around religious imagery in this country. And it was fine when we were talking about prehistoric subjects because that is very much science-led, as David was talking about yesterday. It was very easy to adapt material in a scientific manner for prehistoric history. When you start dealing with Middle East, with medieval history onwards, it becomes more problematic. The trick there is to go to the original sources and to get the teachers to know what inscriptions and things really say, because Georgia was incredibly open, has historically been an incredibly welcome, pluralistic society. When I first studied Georgian, I couldn't believe how there is none of the anti-Semitism in early Georgian literature that you find in almost every other early Christian source. They really were incredibly open and diverse. So what we decided to do was to adapt our project, working not just with school children, but with teachers who were coming from areas, for the teachers who were coming from areas with a majority of children from ethnic and religious minorities, but then widen it out to the children themselves. So, since 2017, we've had phase 1, that was school teachers and museum professionals, and then Darejan and Misha have been reaching out to groups who are marginalized. So IDP children from the kind of villages you heard about yesterday, talking about having summer camps, day trips, museum tours. We worked, this is Misha and my husband here, in Martkopi. The village school in Martkopi is next door to the National Reception Center for overseas refugees. At the time we were there, it had a number of Afghan families, reaching out to them, getting them involved. These are children from IDP villages who went to Quareli in the east to take part in an archaeological dig for a few days, run by one of our colleagues who's been supporting us in this work. And we most recently had funding. This has all been funded by the University of Exeter and the national scientific bodies in the UK. There were summer camps in the south of the country, particularly engaging with Azeri and Armenian communities, because after the recent war over Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, there was a risk those tensions were going to kind of spill over a bit into Georgia. So one element to get to the most remote areas, and Darejan will be able to tell you much more about this because she's been accompanying this, is a traveling exhibition written by Misha that goes out with small finds for children to handle them, to go through the panels, and sometimes somebody goes to teach them flint knapping so they can see archaeology in action. And then we have co-created a series of booklets and information sheets, initially in Georgian and English, where we chose neutral language that doesn't privilege Georgian language, Georgian ethnic identity, or Georgian Orthodox Church, but is more inclusive to anybody who might come from a different background. And these have now been published also in Armenian and Azeri in the relevant regions. And it has been taken up in other areas because the Autonomous Republic of Adjara, which is a Muslim, overwhelmingly Muslim part of Georgia in the west, has learnt from this and is producing their own materials on the basis of what we've been doing here. At which point, I've spoken for long enough, so I'm going to hand over to Darejan.
Thank you, Emma, and thanks to University of Exeter in general, because this is one of our most beloved projects. We do have a lot of very exciting education programs at the GNM, but I would say that this one is one of the best. It really allows inclusiveness and involvement of children from disadvantaged backgrounds and ethnic minorities and other minorities to be more involved in the... Oh, okay, please, okay. So, no, just after Emma's presentation, I will just briefly go through these slides and just make some additional notes, because this program is not only the main points Emma has listed them. This is working with teachers, training them how to use cultural heritage and our collections for learning better and for delivering messages, right? For building tolerance, for building understanding, etc. So we work with teachers. We work with students for that, right? We have traveling exhibitions. We are preparing special materials, okay, for teachers, for curatorial staff, for students, etc. But in addition to all that, this program has so many other additional benefits, and I just wanted to make very quick notes about them, so that we don't forget about these very important aspects of this occupation. So this yellow. Okay, yes. So we really turn these museums into the special hubs for diversity and integration. This works especially well for the regions in East Georgia, I would say in inner Kartli area, which is like Tbilisi Museum, and also South Georgia, where we have a Haltsikhe Museum, because we have a lot of non-Georgian and ethnic minorities living in those areas, okay? It's especially true for Tbilisi Museum because, as I already mentioned once, we have like Armenian, Azeri, Georgian population living there, right? We have eco-migrants from Ajara who are Muslims. We also have eco-migrants from Swaneti area who are Christians. Plus we have, I think, IDPs from not South Ossetia, but Samachablu area, right, who have been resettled there. So it's really, really such a diverse area. And most of these children, they never interact between each other. This is a terrible thing, you know. We have been talking to these children who come from an Azeri village. They said that they have never talked to a Georgian peer. Can you imagine? Just living in 5 kilometers from Tbilisi, they have never talked to a Georgian child. They don't speak even a word of Georgian, you know, although now the government has become a bit more active and they are sending Georgian teachers to these areas, but still, they need a lot of much more interaction and involvement from all sides, especially from civil society side. And so we were trying that the museum would fill in this gap. So here you can see we have been bringing these kids to the museum. First of all, they are getting acquainted with the collections. It's very important that each of them can relate to these collections because you find there only not Georgian history, but history of Azeris living here and Muslim population living there, okay? They also have Armenian objects represented there, right? So like and IDPs and many other groups, they all find something in the museum that they can relate to, okay? This is very important. Next, they work in groups, so we give them special assignments. You know that museum education has very good, I would say, like technology and very educational tips so that you can get these kids involved in a different way. I would say that, you know, myself, although I'm an art historian, I never liked archaeology, you know, because I wouldn't understand why I should like, you know, an archaeological object, you know. If there is a painting or sculpture, why would I pay attention, you know, to a hammer or a stone or whatever, you know, like, but some of these museum technologies really teach you how to concentrate and what you can get from this object. So we were making these kids to break by groups and they would go and work together and come up with really wonderful solutions, you know, about this history and about other things. So this is another thing, that they were working in groups and making friends with each other during this working process. After these working groups, then we were choosing the topics of interest and they would talk together, like Armenian, Azeri, Georgian kids, they would talk about cuisine, okay? Like first they would find maybe the pots and different objects related to food and, you know, drinks, and then they would the discussion would become much more general and they would say, you know, which community likes what to eat, you know, like, for example, what do they serve during the weddings or every day, you know, what's their favorite food, drink, etc. And they would find so many things in common, you know, like most of them would say that khinkali is favorite for everybody, for example, like or hachapuri and like that, you know, so these kind of things. Or we would discuss immigration issues because almost every family in Georgia now has somebody who has immigrated, you know, and like, they would know, these kids know how it feels, you know, to have a family member somewhere abroad, you know. Then you ask them, have you ever felt like you were not allowed to go somewhere, you know, maybe you were told you could not enter a certain building or go somewhere, and how does it feel, you know, to be excluded? And we start from things like that, you know, and then we go to general topics and it really makes them, opens them for discussions and makes them really together. Okay. So we can see these kids, we give them like really nice t-shirts which say that museum unites us. They make some actual work together. Yes, one of the important things that I wanted to stress is that our programs are really promoting healthy lifestyles, you know, because now sports activities and other stuff are not maybe so active among youth, and museum can really help with this issue too, you know, with help with this we have many problems with young people like drugs or alcohol or other stuff, and with our programs we really help them to follow healthy lifestyles. On one side, they get acquainted with our very rich cultural heritage, right? They go to castles, they go to different things, they learn about it, but at the same time, they are involved in sports activities and so on. Well, gender issues. It's very important that in many cases, we have noticed that girls who were not allowed to take care in any other activities at school or or any other place, with the help of our museum, because it really enjoys so much credibility and trust from the local population, with other communities especially, we were able to take girls to such activities that where they were never allowed to take part, you know. These were like even summer camps, staying overnight, etc. And this was very, very important moment for us. Yes, environmental issues, okay? Like, for example, this is Vani Museum, and you would not think that you could, teach these kids there who are coming to see this old Vani archaeological site how to take care of environment. But, you know, we were wrong, because, like, these kids like to take care in a special events that were arranged by the museum. They clean the surrounding area of these plastic bags, everything, and they feel very happy about that, actually. Plus, they get interested into science, you know that museum disciplines are their cross-cutting issues, right? You can talk about physics, you can talk about chemistry, not only about art or history, and this is what these kids do, you know, like they want to learn more about how the metals were made, how gold was worked on in Georgia, and how do all these disciplines go side by side, okay? Plus, they go and have fun, they enjoy a very nice dinner together and become friends, and etc. This is why we really love this program, and as I said, many thanks to University of Exeter and Emma. Plus, I should mention that we also have other foreign donors helping us with this kind of programs, like US Embassy, the Goethe Institute, and many, many other European and Western organizations helping us with it, which is very important, because I think it is so clear for our government should be assisting us to implement such a programs. You know, they should learn from us and from this experience, but instead of that, actually, they're not assisting us a lot, and unless we would have this assistance, financial assistance from our Western partners, I don't think we would be able to do any of these programs, okay? Thank you. I think Misha also wants to say a word or two.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Darejan. I will just say something about, for the institution, what it means, this cooperation, because National Museum is an institution that has over 160 years old history, and of course in different time periods it has different priorities and different approaches. So we spent with Darejan the last 20 years at the National Museum, and we established this partnership with the University of Exeter since 2016-17. So close, but there were other examples in earlier years that Georgian archaeologists had joint projects with the representatives of the University Exeter, and for us it's very important, this continuation. So as Darejan mentioned, so we partnership, international relationships are very important. And we have also other partners also from other countries, and I want to mention that in 2010 we got funding from European Union for twinning project. This twinning program, it's an instrument of European Union to bring together European institutions and potential part of European Union to synergize their standards. So, and this was actually first case in the field of culture when twinning was implemented in the field of culture, because usually these kind of programs are for police department, for border control, aviation, and this kind of thing. So culture means a lot for Georgia, and we see it as an instrument of our integration in European Union and Western world, let's say. Through that program, we had possibility to communicate on all levels of the institution, not only researchers, not only directors, but middle level staff and many 40 people we are intensively working together during over 2 years. So these kind of activities really are important. And also talking about, and I'm emphasizing now development of the institution also, because cooperation that, for example, we had with Exeter University was not only beneficiaries were not only these kids but also our staff members. Emma and Peter, we are teaching, giving English classes to our young colleagues, and yeah, we had many opportunities to exchange our views, to exchange our opinions, and develop joint values and spread them on the community level as well. So this is briefly what I wanted to say, that how important is our partnership, and I once more I thank you, and also thank to all participants who arrived here, because this gives us another opportunity to network and not to be isolated through the Iron Curtain.
I think we should go over there.